The problem is, it is the journey that is the gift. It is the journey, the adventure that source energy wanted to break free of when it was just love and go, I'm going to go on a journey and split myself into trillions of different beings and trillions of different scenarios and trillions of different adventures. And each of those adventures are going to bring me so much beauty and abundance. And here's humanity going, no, it's not the journey. It's, I need a big bank account so that when I die, I leave it to somebody else and I don't even get to, and I've whacked my butt off. And, we've missed the point.
I know on the other side of it, it's fine. And I know that like control is not an issue.
Yeah.
And that all the systems we have in place now are not necessary for where we're going. And like, it will be okay, but getting there is going to be, I think it's going to be as difficult as it needs to be for my soul to take that journey, right, through that process of whatever they call it, alchemy or whatever, right? And for me, it looks like it's going to be pretty bumpy, like, food problems around the world and all these different things. And I'm trying, you try to convey that to other people. And when you do that, you don't know, like, if this really is my soul taking its own journey, and these other people are going to be taking their own journeys, to what extent is it my responsibility, or not even my responsibility, but to what extent does it even make sense for me to be trying to convey how bad I think it's going to get and how we need to prepare? Because if those other people are on their own journey and they aren't seeing that it's going to get as bad as I'm seeing it's going to get, then perhaps they're going to be provided for, you know what I mean, by their soul and their whatever creativity. And they don't need to take those steps of preparation that I feel I need to take for what's about to happen. And it's kind of like, what do you do when you have different people who are in your reality, and perhaps they're in their own reality, and perhaps they don't feel it's necessary to take those steps, but you feel it's necessary?
The energies outside of us that have been keeping us in this program are more to do with keeping us in fear. And so if we step out of that fear game, no matter what they push on us, shouldn't even make a difference because you've risen out of it. So they will keep on, and this is how they get to spiritual people. They get to spiritual people to actually put the message out there. And I know I've done it 1,000 times, and I still sometimes find myself getting caught in that trap of, hey guys, this is happening, watch out. In other words, you've been the speaker for the actual problem.
No, I know. Yeah,
exactly. I know, because I've done it. But and then I'm like, I remember take it off, take the post down, take it down.
Yeah. Like on our last call, I remember you saying like there are certain things you were going to take out, and I totally support you taking them out, because I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, they seed all this information with stuff to make you feel like you're going to be a victim and there's no hope, right? Like, yeah. And it's just like, it's not necessary, because the solutions are all there. It's like, you can go outside and, grow enough potatoes to feed your family and, like, not so much space at all, right? And there's land all over the place that you can use. And yeah.
There's so many more solutions coming. And the more that we lift our frequency up, the more we end up getting these intuitive insights on exactly what to do next for ourselves. And not only that, when we get those insights, we can hold that vibration of clarity within our empowerment of ourselves, that other people go, oh, I feel her power. I want to follow that, because I want to follow power, because I want my own power. And so, and we start building a community from the inside out just by taking our power back and standing in it. But if you come at somebody with the vibration of, I want to fight for this, I want to fight for it, it never works. You'll only get the fight back, and then you end up making it a bigger deal than what it even needed to be. Remember it's about the energy. It's about, that's the raising of humanity's energy into taking their power back and knowing they are way beyond that. You know, I've had beings that have attacked me, and I ended up having this burst of light coming out. I raised my power out of it. They disappear. They cannot attack me. Like, and I know that that's how powerful we all are. So this is all to do with keep bringing it back to the energy. It's so important.
Right. Oh, thanks a lot. Okay. That's
let people make their own decisions in that as well, because they have their own sovereign energy that needs to be done. And then you don't want to be like the leaders and trying to control everyone, because you're turning into them.
Because I mean, that's the thing. If you're trying to prepare for things and you're leading other people down a path of preparation, and they don't have perhaps the insights that you have, that things are going to be okay on the other side, then all you're doing is dragging a bunch of people through a bunch of shit they don't need to be dragged
through your own mud. All they have to do is convince the mind, convince the energy to lower itself, and then get everybody else to speak it out for them. That's really been their biggest game, is get as many people to speak out our crap for them, so that it keeps them in this victimized situation. But this is about us taking our power back. It's got nothing, in the end, honestly, we'll be flicking them off like flies. It'll be like, whatever, mate, might make any difference. We're going to be like water and find another way around it. And we always do.
There were some questions you did want to ask.
If you still remember this really crazy ass stream, right? So straight after the Pleiadian portal went up, I ended up, the Arcturians came through me in a big way, and I'm like, need some rest. I think you might have saw that in my life. And they gave me this dream. This is really kind of cool, this dream. I was watching somebody else's life. It was this boy who had this opening to Arcturian messages, and he was shown or gifted this. They showed him this, like, it was like I've actually created the picture of it now for the video. Like a crystal that was flying very fast through the atmosphere, through the space. And it was like a comet flying through the space. Every particle it touched, they said, turned everything in the particles into quasiparticles. I'd never even heard of quasiparticles before. So I'm like, does that even exist? Quasiparticles. Okay. Then he was talking about that he was told, by the Arcturians, the quasiparticles are around us all the time. And it was something to do with our neurotransmitters in our brain that could react or could make these quasiparticles react in a manner that would help us become telepathic, telekinetic, and all of that stuff. It was an alignment through, I suppose, pineal gland neurotransmitter, like an intention that we have ourselves. So these gifts are around us constantly, but we're just not aligned or tapping into that reality of that. Now, and then I was like, number one, what the hell is a quasiparticle? And I did ask my daughter, scientist daughter over in Sweden, and she said, she thought it was something. And then she went, she looked it up and she went, no, it's actually something that isn't, it's like a fake particle, not quite in flux of something. Or
I don't know so much, but my understanding was kind of like they have, so for example, they have these things called, the guy's name was Feynman, and they have these things called Feynman diagrams. And basically it's like in quantum physics, you have one particle and you go to another particle, and in between those two particles, there's like an infinite potentiality of different pathways they can transition from one thing to another thing. So when you have like kind of like a quantum reaction kind of thing. I'm not an expert by any means, so I might be
Ah,
making
okay,
mistakes
yeah.
here. And those different pathways that things can go through, they've created sort of particles there that need to be there for the transition, but they cannot actually ever exist in a stable state, or they can't be measured and they can't ever really be proven to exist, was kind of my understanding. And I think that's what the quasi particles are, but I could be wrong. But
Because
I
so
think
it's
right.
like a
That's one
particle is a
understanding.
particle. There's a space within the between or
It's like
within the
a
particle
transitionary
itself
state, kind of.
that has an unlimited potential that can shift the particle into something else.
Sorry.
Is that correct? So
it's not actually, it's more like it's like a flow, like in the Feynman diagrams, they're kind of like flow diagrams. So the way that a quasi diagram, the simplest way to explain it, I think, would be to say in that context of that diagram is it's an intermediary state through which the quantum energy flows before it becomes something else, but it's not a stable state that can exist by itself that can be measured. Like, it's just an intermediary state, which is kind of why I think they call it quasi, because it's not, they can't really prove it's there or not there, other than to prove that it's a necessary intermediary step kind of thing. But I may be wrong.
What's
That was
quark then? The quark is a thought form that's going to imagine something into fruition. So I'm thinking,
you know more about me then.
Similar to our intention creating a different path for a quasi particle. See, I'm really, if I really take this down to just a place of being able to create, because I'm asking, how can we become more telepathic and telekinetic? I know when I held the hand of Parisha, the elder that I was with, she went into a state. She started breathing in this really weird fashion and went into a state of mind. So she would have had to have gone into some sort of state to be able to access my thoughts and connect with me, and become telepathic. So there's something that we're missing to be able to be truly telepathic, where we're in a certain state of, and I know it was unconditional love. There was definitely unconditional love there. Maybe she had to clear all of the issues she had of me and what she thought of me and all of those things. If you really think about it, that would make sense. And then it puts her in a state, and then it changes those particles within, like we end up connecting. I suppose that's why they're saying quasi-particles are around us all the time. We can access them. Like, I really believe we'll be able to use this information to even become telekinetic. Like,
if I just take off the whole physics hat and I just I totally ignore any of that sort of academic stuff that I might have read in the past, I can give you a much better analysis of how I think this might make sense in the context of being telepathic and whatnot. I'm just trying to find an email I sent to someone 2 days ago that had a link in it to a video. What's it called? Brain enhancement techniques listed in CIA document. And this one was, I'm trying to find what it was called, the actual document. It's called the Gateway Process. And there was another video that my mom actually dragged up when I sent her the video to look at, which was even better than that one. Yeah. In the context that it kind of, or it wasn't better, but it went into an explanation of sort of how the person had done it. But basically, what I think is going on is around the nerves in your body, there is I don't know if I'll be able to find it in the book, actually. I have a book that talks about this, but there's a sort of a layer. It's kind of like what the Jared Pollock guy talks about, this fourth phase of water stuff. There's a layer of atoms which are in a coherent state, which basically means, as far as I can tell, that they're resonating in unison. And they're around the nerves. And they, to varying degrees of coherence, the amount of coherence they have is in a way, it's your ability to interact with what perhaps you're calling quasi-particles, but I would call sort of, I guess it's like they call them neutrinos or relic neutrinos or etheric energy. And your ability to interact with that etheric energy is related to the degree of coherence you have in varying parts of your body, I think. And I would imagine that quite often people talk about how you're like, so your nerves are coated with these layers of easy water, as Jared Pollack calls it, or as this other, what was it? The other document. So the one about the CIA document that was interesting was talking about how basically your chakras interact and how it'll end up causing a resonant frequency up and down your spine. And as that builds, continuously amplifying, eventually it reaches a point where you are in coherence and your energy is able to interact with the field. And that's what gives you the ability to interact with non-local stuff.
Okay.
And experience these things. And that's kind of where, in that specific CIA document and that video, they talk about it. And they're talking about that's kind of where the telepathy comes from, is because you are now resonating with that etheric energy. They don't call it etheric energy. I'm just using that as like a term that I would use, but you're interacting with that etheric energy, and that's what's giving you the ability to do the telepathy and the non-local stuff. And I think that is through.
If we break it down to our mind and how we how we do this, because another thing that they were bringing up was mantras where you held your fingers at a certain position to. I think that was like a physical kind of a feeling. You could choose whatever one you wanted, but when you held your hands at a certain place, that meant it would click in your mind. Okay, now I've got to clear everything that I have about my reality, have that space within me of just love for it and acceptance for all. Now I can shift, because then you're interacting with what the Acturians were calling quasi-particles. Now I can shift this, but you have to let go of everything of your mind to get to that 0 point, which I think is what you're talking about with the chakras, coming into coherency with each other kind of thing. So I try to break it down so that we could teach others, we need to come to this absolute stillness within us. Because I know when I picked up the 4-leaf clover out of off a hill somewhere, just by saying I'm going to pick up 4-leaf clover, and had that intention held, I had to first come to a 0 point within my mind of nothing, just nothing existed. But I think we can more easily get there through love and acceptance of all. I think that there's even an easier path now. Through just like, for instance, Parisha, when she's talking to me and holding my hand and being in that deep breathing, she probably had to get to a point of love and acceptance, because I felt immense unconditional love between us when we were talking telepathically. So it naturally opens up. That's why when we raise our frequency or our vibration up, we naturally start to have these gifts coming our way, because we are open now to connection with others as ourselves. Like you are me and I am you. The wall is me and the wall is me as well. And then it brings me back to Jill Bolt Taylor, when my guides were showing me humanity's potential. Jill Bolt Taylor had the half of her brain go down the left hemisphere. She only had the right hemisphere. She saw her hand disappear into the wall. It became her. She became expansive. She became the wall. She became everything. So that means everything around us is that as well, which means we can interact with it. We can shift it. We can change it. We can manipulate it. And it brings us into a whole other level of awareness of how we're creating our reality. But then we have to remember, as a grounder, as our logical brain, that we have a program running. And that program is running specifically for us to have an adventure in. Otherwise, we disappear off this earth and we become severe autistic and not really being able to interact with each other anymore as a separated entity. So it's, we have to also be grounded with this as well. So, you know, we're still got a program running, but in this instant, I'm going to change this beautiful crystal into a gold coin.
Yep.
Imagine if I just did that right now, right?
Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
I mean, I know this is becoming into the awareness of it, but we do need to raise our vibration into that acceptance of all through love. Love is what's going to change it all.
Yeah, like there's some other ways of, I've understood it as well, which are very similar, which are kind of like, I think Dan Winter talks about it in some respects.
I've met Dan Winter.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it before. And he said, he's always talking about how it's a shareable wave, which to me means it's like it's a shareable, coherent state, which everyone can tune into. And it's kind of like, you can only tune into it if it is coming from a positive, kind of loving place. And part of me, I don't really understand it, but I have this intuition that it's kind of like, we are all like sort of transmuting this sort of etheric energy all the time within us. And it's only through that sort of like positive heart consciousness that it happens.
Because then it's a clear vessel. Then there's no blockages. I think that the logical mind trying to control everything blocks because it wants to keep a stable grounding. And it's so scared that it will fly off, that it ends up putting a block there. I mean, but it's kind of overexerted itself to the point where we don't even have any gifts from our soul or our, of love for each other. I see it like a tube. Whenever you tell me about that, I see like a tube. And then if it's clear, you've got a clear pathway to go back and forth. That's love. That's acceptance. Love to me is acceptance. Same thing. And then as soon as your mind comes and puts a block there, you know, you can't go through it. But the block is meant to happen specifically for the program to run, right? Because if the program didn't run, we wouldn't be here on a surface and have separated reality too. So there's certain blocks that are supposed to be there for us to be able to have this reality run. And then if you go to another planet, it would be a different blocks because they're doing a different program. So those blocks are here specifically for us, and that's what I call the grounding of us actually being here. But then when you've got a clear vessel just coming from love of who you are, connection to your soul, you should be able to manipulate little bits and fractions and bits and pieces just through your own willingness of saying, I deserve to have this in my reality. I deserve, you know, a $1,000 gold coin on my hand. And that's coming from self-love. Well, everybody wants to manifest money, so it's a good example to use.
It's true, yeah.
But that would have to be that I 100% know I am self-deserving of that. And also I have to let go of this beautiful crystal, which I love very much. So I don't want to let go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You don't want to turn that into a gold coin.
No, I'll use something else. It's only through these discussions that we can have. Yeah. Actually make, we can start to make more sense of the reason why we're letting go of all our shadow self and coming into empowerment, seeing everything as acceptance and love, and then the gifts coming, why the gifts are coming. Because my logical brain, right, wants to know why. Why should I let go? Why should I allow only acceptance and love to come in? Why should I let go of my controlled grip on this reality?
Like, I'll give you another example of kind of where I've seen this kind of thing about manifesting your reality play out in sort of another area on the internet. There are these things called like Orbeez, which are allegedly invented by this guy or discovered by this guy called David Hudson in the 80s. And it's like they call them orbitally rearranged monatomic elements. And if you actually look at a lot of the people who take these things as supplements, what you see is you see people who feel like they have an oversized influence on their reality. And that's how they tell you. They tell you kind of like, you know, I'm able to manifest things, I'm able to do things, all these things start happening. But then when you actually look at it as an outside observer, you can often show it to be sort of confirmation bias or something else. And there's no actual evidence that they've really manifested these things. It could just be a coincidence, right? It's kind of the thing you say, right? But then the way I understand it is what they're doing is they're basically loading up their nervous system with these high energy states of coherent matter, which are causing their whole body to basically, I don't know if you could say that their aura was larger or whatever you could say, but they have an outsized influence to kind of interact with reality in a way that they feel that they are manifesting things, as opposed to just being not victim to, but of, you know what I mean, like subject to. And it's really interesting because it's like, where is it that you've determined that what's happening is something that you've caused versus something that the universe has caused? And if you actually look at a lot of the esoteric stuff, it's like it's all shared. And the states of mind that these people get to are oneness, where everything is oneness, right? It's like it's all oneness that's kind of, in a way, controlling what happens. And it's just your perception of how that is appearing. And maybe there is, like, I believe in free will to a certain extent, but it's like, is the free will the section of that oneness that you are, in a sense, claiming dominion over? Or is it like, is it actually something that, you know what I mean? Like, what is it? Like when people say like, well, that gold coin, right? So I would say, like, if that gold coin actually appears in front of you right there, it's appearing there because that sort of oneness consciousness has kind of decided, this is what we need to do to move something forwards here. And it's really that's why your heart is so important to this process, I think, because it's that heart consciousness, which is basically, it is what that universal oneness is. And it's your ability to sort of say, I am that, and I am going to be a part of that. And I'm going to be not subservient to, but it's like, I'm going to be of service to that heart kind of consciousness. And when you do that, it kind of lays the foundation for those kinds of sort of outsized interactions to happen, like turning something miraculously from one thing to another thing, right? But it can't happen unless you're in that resonant state of oneness. And a lot of these guys, I think, who are taking these orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, they're not going through that heart consciousness to get there. They're just doing something which basically kind of pumps up their coherence of their body to be in tune with the oneness without needing to use the heart to do it necessarily. And if you actually look at the historical stuff of a lot of, I think, the Egyptian stuff, and I think it's the Draco stuff, allegedly the Egyptians were consuming a lot of these quote unquote orbitally rearranged monatomic elements in their white powder gold. Yeah. And that was passed down to them from the alleged Draco,
apparently,
whatever, right?
Moses had it in his cave as well. It was all over the cave that he went in, and then he was become delirious, and then he became could change things. But
so I kind of wondered, like,
it's still that's a substance still outside the thyself, and so
and they're using it to
needing a substance, and so you're grasping for something outside yourself to be able to create something that's coherent with what you really wanted.
Which
But it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't come from, if we come from the state of true oneness, it's just love. That's what oneness was before it went on the journey and split itself into some two different fractions to be able to create an adventure of opposing self, even though both sides are love. And then we forgot that both sides are love. I forgot that you are love. I forgot that my kids are love. I forgot that everyone's just coming from that space. And so you can't connect with them if you're already having a logical thought pattern that they aren't love. That in itself is the block. And so that's really the true, that would be the true, we're lifting ourselves into a better, higher vibration without having to take a substance to be able to do that. Yeah.
I think that's really important.
That the substance isn't needed, because everything outside of us can be a path. It can be like you could take any sort of drug and it can be a leading path, especially a hallucinogenic kind of drug or whatever. It can be a pathway to show you the feelings that you want to claim back as yourself and the power of who you are. But if you keep on taking it to do that, then you're still looking outside yourself, and that outside thing can be controlled by another, which means you're not coming from your own empowerment. That's why it's so important at the moment, why we're going through this shift, to take back our power. Who are we and how do we really feel about ourselves? Because how we feel about ourselves is how we interact and feel about others as well. And that gives clarity to those other people and be able to allow us to have these interactions of telekinesis and telepathic abilities to just flow through everyone, because we're all raised, they are us and we are them. They keep bringing me back to the same point that I had when I went into, because I took something 2 years ago, and then I ended up being in line with oneness, and I realized looking down the street that everything was my creation, everything, because I'm coming from the eyes, only the sole point of oneness itself being love, creating. And so that meant that I was the only one that existed. And then everyone outside of me, and that sounds really, egotistical to say something like that, but everyone outside of me was me as well. So it is like the whole existence was just one, and that's how I felt. That's the place. When we get to that place, we can shift everything just from our own essence of who we are, of absolutely taking our power back and self-love. That means if you took that back and your power became that enlightened, that your reality starts shifting, because all of a sudden you start getting gifts, you start showing other people those gifts, those people go, wow, you're showing them, then you tell them how to take it back themselves, and then you're lifting each other up like this, and you're starting to come into this whole other vibrational awareness on planet Earth as humanity's consciousness. But there could be other people on Gaia herself that won't go in, don't want to go into that essence of who they still have, the blockages of who they are, the victimization, the controlling that manner of coming from lack to control outside themselves. They will live a totally different reality. Their reality is still on Gaia itself, but they're in a different reality, and the reflection of, I need to go fight this, and I need to go hunt this person, I need to go control this, and then they end up creating that reality. But your realities might pass by in some instances to give them a clue to empowering them, but it will never stay in alignment, because yours is always in a higher dimension. That's where the dimensions start to split. And then you end up seeing groups of people. That's why tribes are starting to come together. That's why we're starting to say we're looking for our tribe people. It just automatically will happen anyway. But so then you have these groups that start to live together. Already the family that you came through, and the family that is with you is part of those tribal members in the respective They have choice to go separate themselves into another reality, because everyone has control of where they want to go, but they have an opportunity, a big opportunity to come with you if you're one that starts this. But someone has to start it, right? Someone has to start off with saying, I empower myself from the inside out. Everyone is me. I am oneness, and I'm going to keep moving through my life like this. Yes, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Then I'll go back into the normal story of what reality wants to dictate on me, and then I'm living that reality of what reality wants to dictate on me.
Yeah.
So you keep going in and out of this like that until you just turn around one day and you just go, that's it.
Yeah. I don't know, like it's that's what a lot of people say, you know, it's like that's part of our mission, is to sort of transmute disorder into sort of loving order again, right? That's what humans are supposed to be doing, kind of deal. Sort of like, how do I explain it? Like quite often you hear about the second law of thermodynamics, where everything needs to tend towards entropy, right? Or chaos, as they call it, right? But then the one way things tend away from chaos back to order is through, like, there's a number of different ways, I guess, but the way I understand it can happen, at least, is you have these sort of coherent fields of energy, which have the ability to basically convert uncoherent energy back into coherent energy. And I think the most common one of these is like kind of a toroidal vortex field. And I think even Dan Winter talks about how, you know, this phi ratio vortex or whatever will convert sort of randomness into coherence at different energy levels, and that's generally not even acknowledged as something that can exist, because it's the, you know, the second law of thermodynamics. But I kind of see that as a good analogy for, you know, how you hear about how humanity and spirituality and the soul is here to convert, you know, pain back into heart consciousness, kind of thing, right? And it's kind of a similar thing, because if you have these sort of energy things, like I assume the aura is a kind of bubble that has a golden ratio vortex at the top, right? Just like you were talking about in the past about how you saw the universe was traveling in a trajectory where it was going through that point, right? In kind of like a donut, right? Or whatever. Maybe it was the galaxy or whatever. And it's kind of like, I see that as kind of like, that's the process of taking all that disorder and recondensing it back into order, which is the,
if you think about it,
kind of thing, right?
Source energy is just love that went on an adventure. It split itself into, when I saw it, it was just like a lot of different trillions of different people's lives split into going on this adventure. But when it came back to itself, it came back to itself through me. And so be it for you if you had that experience. So be it for anything that had that experience of coming back to, I'm the creator. And so everything around me is what I have created. And then you take responsibility for everything. Every thought that you've had is created. Every program that you attached yourself to has created this reality for you. There's millions of people on this planet, and if you take it from an outside point of view, that are having different realities all the time. So for you to go back to that point of zeroness and taking that back, is I see when I went on that journey, I literally saw, they showed me interacting with other people's lives, and I become their life. Now, the only way to do that is to become the observer, because you can't become all those different multiple lives and retain it in your left logical brain. It's too much. It would, you know, it's just too much to handle. You go nuts. So the only way to not go nuts is to become the observer of those. So every time I expanded out and became all of the world's, everyone on this world's reality, I had to become the observer of the world, of humanity's consciousness. And then I had to become the observer of all the other beings' consciousness, and just kept going out to the point where I became so much the observer that I became just that, the observer. I became creator. I was just source energy, love. And then the craziest thing was, it all came from me. So it all came out of me. And I went on this journey of becoming the observer. And then when it ended up becoming just the observer of everything, that ball of love, that was me. That was me and my reality. So it just came back into itself of me. So then I could walk down the street and go, oh my gosh, even the lampposts. I created the lampposts. That's so cool. Because I had no, they're lampposts, they should be blah, blah, and they should be this, and they should be, I had nothing. It was just pure essence of love and being the observer. And so everything, there was a little kid that was walking behind us that was crying. And I'm like, oh, wow, she's crying. That's cool. You know, like her interaction of her reality is interacting with mine, and she's part of me and I'm part of her. It's just, nothing mattered. It was just this essence of absolute love. And if you walk through this world like that, then everything, there is no friction between fighting. There's no friction between anything. It just washes through your life, and you just carry on in an amazing adventure. And you start to carve your path to what you really want to exist through, that love of who you are. It was a really profound journey.
I probably have never had it to the extent that you've had it, but there was a point, I think, I don't know, it would probably have been like nearly 20 years ago, where I had a similar state that I was in. And for me, it was just a total acceptance of everything. And it was a total understanding. I could understand everything. Like I could understand why, like I'd say I couldn't understand abstract, crazy ideas, but I could understand on like why something needed to be the way it was. So like you say, like the girl crying, like I was, or like I would see something and I'd be like, that's terrible. But part of me could feel inside why it was necessary. And why it wasn't something I needed to be opposed to. Like part of just some essence of me.
It was an acceptance, because I know that the kid behind me that was crying, I was also walking with my partner who had a lot of mind games playing, and I actually saw that reflection of part of his reality and the annoyance that he had in his mind. And I went, oh, that's interesting. But there was no judgment. There was no nothing. It was just like, just interest. Oh, that's really cool. You know, that baby is like reflecting his mind, and now he's got a reason to be annoyed, because he was looking for a reason to be annoyed. And so we're really searching our life out all the time. We're creating our life through searching for the next step in our life. That in itself is really powerful, because what are you literally searching for? Are you searching for the problem so that you can heal it? Are you searching to manipulate all of that that's around us because you're not happy? Well, you're not empowered in yourself then. You know, you can wake up in the morning and just be in that feeling of pure essence of love of who you are. And then everything that comes to you is just acceptance. And you just use it as the adventure of moving through, rather than I have to control this outside of myself to make it happen for me so that I feel good about myself, because I don't feel good about myself. It's a different way of being able to approach life.
The biggest struggle for me with this whole mentality of this stuff, like of basically tuning into that oneness and understanding everything, right? Like it doesn't take away your free will, because you still have your free will. But if you're not careful, you might lose the initiative to exercise your free will, when perhaps it would be something wise to do so. Like, for example, like,
but then you
I'm trying to
wouldn't, because you're empowered by who you are and you're coming from love, and so you end up just doing without even putting yourself down for doing it. So you'd speak up for yourself, blah 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 blah, no feeling whatsoever towards it, but you just go blah blah blah, you know, oh no, you don't do that to me, you know.
Okay, so
I'm going over here, I'm doing this, but there's no, oh my god, I have to save myself and control everything, and there's none of that coming from lack. It's just, oh yeah, interesting that you say I should do that, but I'm not. I'm doing this.
That's
you know,
a really good point.
Why would I do that? They bring it up. It's really interesting. There was something really cool that happened in Australia. They did this experiment between Aboriginal tribes and the army, and they went out into the wilderness and they said to the Aboriginal tribes, our goal is to survive on the plane, on, you know, Earth. And they're like, yep. And we want to see if we're just as good as you at this. So we're going to start at this point and we're going to end over here. And as the first one to get to here, surviving. And they're like, okay, whatever. So they started off, and apparently the Aboriginals, they didn't get together and they didn't have a chat and they didn't do anything. Cameramen were following them. They just started moving towards, you know, said goal. And off they go, day 2, day 3, or something like that. And they're doing really good. Actually, they were ahead because the army people were collectively coming together and, oh, guys, you have to do this, this, this. This is your job. This is your job. Blah, 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 blah. So they're taking their time because they had to try to organize everything and they weren't trusting in each other. And then the Aboriginals got to a certain point and they started veering off. And they started veering off in a place that was going far away from the end point. And the cameraman just went, well, we can't say anything. We're just following, right? We're observing. So we just let them go. And then it was a couple of days later, it's coming to the end point. They could see that the army people were going to win and get to the end point. And they said, well, what are you doing? You're going off there. And they said, this is to do with surviving, right, on the earth. Why would we go to that point? There's nothing over there to be able to help us survive. This is more to do, you know, the reason why they did it was to survive, and they collectively moved in that frame so that they could survive, where these guys are like, the end point is the most important. It was overriding the surviving on earth. And I think that's half the problem of everyone's trying to race to an end point, and we're not living our life. We're not present in the moment and enjoying, coming from love of empowerment of who we are and loving every moment of this. And what adventure can I, you know, create next and all of that. It's more the end goal of, you know, having the big bank balance, and they feel crap through the whole journey. And the problem is, it is the journey that is the gift. It is the journey, the adventure that source energy wanted to break free of when it was just love, and go, I'm going to go on a journey and split myself into trillions of different beings and trillions of different scenarios and trillions of different adventures. And each of those adventures are going to bring me so much beauty and abundance. And here's humanity going, no, it's not the journey. It's, I need a big bank account so that when I die, I leave it to somebody else and I don't even get to, you know, and I've whacked my butt off. And, you know, we've missed the point. We've missed the point. It is the journey and the absolute being present. And seeing all this adventure coming around us, whether it's something that we so-called say is negative or not, isn't really freaking negative. It's how we interact with it that makes it negative in the end.
I was waiting for the surprise ending where all the natives, all of a sudden there was some monsoon and they hopped on a raft and they beat the army guys. But I guess that didn't happen, right? So
no, but they were surviving well.
They were happy. That was all that mattered. Yeah.
The thing is, we're in present moment and we're surviving on Earth. We're not going to go to that end point. There's nothing there. You can. Why would I want to try to use?
Like this is the thing, right? They frame our reality with problems that they've created and they have the solutions for, and they lead us along
And we take it hook, line, and sinker and start screaming it out to everyone. So we're fueling the problem. We actually create more of it. And I've done it myself. I take full responsibility for the bits that I've created. But each time I've done it, I've gone, feels a little squiff now. And I'm feeling that more and more every time I start screaming out their stuff. You know, in the end, nobody has any control over you when you come from a space of source energy and love. Nobody, because that is what they are as well. And you can there will always be another solution, because you're source energy and empowering yourself, so you will always create another path. The problem is as humanity's consciousness has been told that there is only one solution. You know, when we go to school, there's only one right way of doing things. And that's when you get the A mark. So they've really funneled us into this one little, you know, crevasse of literally jumping off a cliff like lemurs into their reality, so that they feel, because they're coming from their own lack. They're all coming from their own lack. And they think that if they can control millions, that they will feel better about themselves. They never do. They'll never reach that pinnacle, because they've never gone inside themselves to realize that they're source energy as well, that they love going on an adventure and just enjoy it.
Yeah. I really liked what you said earlier, or it resonated with me, where you basically said that I've always kind of worried that if you really embrace the love aspect too much, you'd become a pacifist. But the way you said it was basically, no, you don't become a pacifist, because you will state the truth, but you won't let it turn into an argument, because it doesn't need to become an argument. So it's like, you'll just blurt out whatever it is that you're feeling that isn't what.
And they would feel that. They would feel you coming from that empowerment, and they'd just go, oh, I'm not going to get what I need out of this person. And what do they need out of this person? They need you to be a victim, so that they feel good about themselves and fuel their own lack. So if you don't give them that opportunity, because you're standing in your power, then all of a sudden they're like, well, I have to turn somewhere else to someone else to get that lack. And they move away from your reality. So you're literally creating your reality just by standing in your power.
And that's why it's like so important that they always try to subvert all of these protests and stuff, because if they're coming from that place of authentic truth and love, then they really don't have, you know, there's nothing they can really do to remove the power from them, other than to turn them into something that's sort of not authentic anymore, or is coming from a place of fear or whatever, right? So
we're constantly being shoved down our throat that we are the victim, constantly.
And the other thing is, I think a lot of the time,
our reality, and you have to do, you know, you either want to fight it, protect it, control it. Well, that's what they're doing, and we end up trying to do the same back, and it ends up being this fueling reality of never really escaping it. To truly escape something like that is just to come back to, I love who I am, I know who I am, and I trust my heart 100%. So when I speak with that confidence. I speak with knowingness that I'm doing this for the benefit of my reality that I'm creating. And you will always say the right thing, and then anyone coming from lack coming up to you to say you have to, they'll have to go somewhere else. They won't even meet your reality, because they're searching for someone to control. If you're not someone to control, your realities don't meet. So the victim is just as much the problem as the perpetrator, and people don't realize that. You can only have a perpetrator if you have a victim. You can only have a victim if you have a perpetrator. As soon as one steps out of it and says, I take my power back, I love who I am, whether it be the controller or the victim, then the other person will either have to stand up to their power of who they are, or they have to go find someone else to fulfill their obligation of being in lack. Freaking cool.
Yeah, Bobbie, that's awesome.
But that's it. We just got to turn around and go, this is how it works. Like if someone tells us this is how our reality is going to go, and we feel into the fear of it, we've already said, yes, that's how it's going to go. But if we turn around and go, nah, that's not how it's going to go, that's not my reality, I'm doing this one over here, then it won't happen.
And that's why everyone always says, you know, it's like we've already won.
Yeah.
It's just that it's how big of a diversion you're going to go on before you get there.
Yeah. How bad, how much do you want to chase the problem? I constantly get given that freaking movie, one of my favorite movies, What Dreams May Come.
I love that movie.
In it. Was one of my favorite movies. And when he went on a search for his wife that had died from suicide, he was expecting a fight, and he ended up in hell expecting a fight. And as soon as he stepped away from hell sort of just fell away, and he's like, oh, I don't need to fight. Oh, of course I don't need to fight. It's just because of expectations created that loop. We've got to be really careful what we're expecting in our reality. We've got to start expecting miracles to happen, like life to start looking amazing and good.
And it's going to shift everything. It'll shift everything.
It will, because we just go, that's how it is.
All right, well, have a good day. I'll let you go now. Thanks a lot, Bobbie.
Thanks, Peter. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
You too. Take care. Okay. Have a good one.